So here's a big question. How do you raise good kids without God? I mean, in a world where religion is often the go-to framework for morality, for community, for just meaning, right? Raising kids in a secular home, that's a whole different ballgame. It comes with its own unique set of challenges. That's exactly what we're digging into today with Deborah Mitchell's book, Growing Up Godless. It's basically a guide from someone on the front lines of secular parenting. So let's see how she takes on these huge questions.
So why did Mitchell even write this book? Well, it was pretty simple, really. She just saw a massive gap. You had all these philosophers and academics writing these dense books about atheism, but what was missing? The voice of a mom, someone dealing with the real day-to-day stuff. She wanted to be a voice for all those parents out there juggling soccer practice, doctor's visits, and those tricky dinner conversations, all while trying to raise good, thoughtful, moral kids who just happen to be, as she calls them, unchurched.
All right, so here's our game plan for breaking this down. First up, we're going to get a little personal and find out the author's why. Then we'll tackle the big one, morality without dogma. After that, we'll get into raising critical thinkers. Then we'll talk about how to navigate a world that's pretty religious. And finally, we'll explore how to create your own meaning in life. Let's do it.
So what starts someone on a path like this? For the author, Deborah Mitchell, it wasn't some slow, gradual drift away from faith. Nope, it was one single moment that just shattered everything. I want you to just picture this. You're driving, maybe taking your kids to school, and a story comes on the radio. A story about just horrific cruelty to a child. For Mitchell, that was it. That was the moment. Her faith just broke. The idea of a loving, all-powerful God, how could that possibly exist in the same world as that kind of suffering? It couldn't. She says her belief just vanished, poof, in an instant, just like finding out about Santa Claus.
And suddenly, there's this huge void. And it's filled with these massive questions, right? If there's no God, who's got our back? Who protects us? What even is good anymore? Who are we? And look, these aren't just late-night philosophical questions. These are the real, practical things that secular parents have to figure out every single day. The book's whole argument is that the answers aren't in some ancient holy book. They're found in us, in human empathy, and in simple reason.
Okay, so this leads us straight into one of the biggest questions that always gets thrown at non-believers, right? If you don't believe in God and hell, what's stopping you from just doing whatever you want? It's a fair question, and the book's answer is incredibly simple. We are humanity. I mean, just look at the massive shift in thinking here. In a lot of religious approaches, you have this external authority, right? God expects you to behave. It's about reward and punishment. But the secular approach, it completely flips that on its head. It says, this is not how I expect you to behave, and you should expect more from yourself, too. See the difference? It's all about building an internal moral compass. The motivation isn't fear or reward, it's empathy, it's self-respect, it's responsibility to the people around you. You're not just checking boxes and following rules. You're actively trying to be a person you can actually be proud of.
So what does that look like in practice? Well, Mitchell offers up a few new commandments for modern life. And these aren't about pleasing some invisible deity. They're just practical rules for living well with other humans. Simple things rooted in empathy and respect. Don't hurt people. Don't lie. Don't steal. Talk to people kindly. And I love this one. Smile. And even pick up trash you see. It's a great list, right? Simple reminders that our actions have an impact.
Okay, so if you're not giving your kids a Bible or a Quran to follow, what do you give them? Well, according to this book, you give them something way more powerful, a toolkit for critical thinking. And the goal here isn't just to get them to question religion, it's to get them to question everything. Mitchell brings up a perfect example of the kind of thing you see online all the time. A big, shocking headline like, "Hammers kill more people each year than guns." It's designed to get a reaction, right? To make you angry or scared, not to make you think. But for a critical thinker, the first response isn't, "Wow, no way," or "That's a lie." The first response is, "Huh, is that actually true? Let's find out." And here's the payoff. You do a tiny bit of digging, you look at the actual FBI data, and nope, not even close. Firearms are involved in 68% of homicides, hammers and clubs, 4%. And this is the absolute core of her philosophy. You're not just telling your kids what's true, you're empowering them to be their own little researchers, their own fact checkers. You teach them to ask questions, do the work, and base what they believe on actual evidence, not just some crazy headline someone posted.
But let's be real, raising a kid without religion doesn't happen in a bubble, right? You're still living in a very religious world. And honestly, one of the biggest challenges for secular parents often comes from their own families. You know, those well-meaning but super religious relatives.
This quote in the book from a dad it really hits home. It captures the pain of this so well. He says his mom has gotten into radicalized evangelicalism, and he's asked her over and over, please, just be a grandmother. Don't talk to my kids about your religion. You can just feel the conflict there, can't you? He loves his mom, but there's this huge clash of values every time they see each other.
So, what do you do in a situation like that? It feels like a total minefield. Well, the author lays out a really practical 3-step plan. First, you start with love. Acknowledge that you know they love you and are concerned. Second, you state your position. Clearly, you had your chance to parent, now this is my turn. And third, and this is the hard part, you have to set a firm boundary. You have to be willing to say, if you keep pushing this, we'll have to have supervised visits. And it's not about being mean, it's not an ultimatum, it's about protecting your family and your right to raise your kids your way. All right, so this brings us to the final and maybe the biggest question of all. If there's no divine plan, no promise of heaven, then what's the point? Where do we find meaning? The book's final section makes this incredible argument that having only one life, a finite life, doesn't make it meaningless. It actually makes the search for meaning that much more important and beautiful.
The author jokes that this should be on a t-shirt, and honestly, it's perfect. My parents gave me a life, and now I have to figure out what to do with it. That's the secular worldview right there. It's not about discovering some preordained purpose. It's about creating it. You've been given this one life. Now, what are you going to build?
And what about the end? When someone we love dies, how do you find comfort without the promise of seeing them again in an afterlife? The book closes with this absolutely beautiful passage from a writer named Aaron Freeman. He suggests that at a funeral, you want a physicist to get up and talk, to remind everyone about the first law of thermodynamics, that no energy is ever created and none is ever destroyed. Think about that. According to the laws of physics, not a single bit of the person you love is gone. They're just less orderly. It completely reframes death. It's not about being erased, it's about being transformed. It leaves you with this incredible final thought, that maybe becoming less orderly is just another way of saying you've become part of everything.